about Doctor Who today. And question for both of you. We'll start with Rula. Do you remember how you got the part in Doctor Who?
Well, as usual, through an audition or an interview or something like that, but I can't remember much about it. It was an awfully long time ago, 1983 or 84, if I remember rightly. I remember even then it was a huge kudos to be asked even to go up and see them for Doctor Who, and of course having a young child at the time who was obsessed with the programme, it was an added plus. But about the actual audition, no, I don't remember an awful lot.
And the same for you, Bridget?
I didn't have to audition, but my no, not for that reason, because it was so insignificant. It was my second. I was just absolutely, totally unknown, and it was my second television I did, and it was only 4 episodes. I wasn't like a proper serious running person like you. I was just in, just barely in it, and there's a story attached to that as well, but I'm going to save it because it's about the only thing I've got to say about it. So I'm saving that.
Rula, what are your memories of your, shall we say, bizarre costume in that story? Especially
bizarre?
Especially with the headband.
That was my own invention. I thought it made me look like a serious scientist or whatever it was I was supposed to be. My hair was very long at the time, so it was deemed that I should wear it up in some way, and then I hit on this idea of this sort of headband thing with all the hair rolled into it. I thought the costume was
sounds wonderful.
A sort of Space 1999, which was almost a carbon copy of the one that I wore in Space 1999, sort of white trousers, a tunic and a belt. It looked very sort of real and doctor-like or scientist-like or whatever she was supposed to be.
Yeah. Brigit,
yes.
Sadly, only 1 episode of your story exists in the archives.
Really? Only 1? Yeah. And I was in 4? Yeah. Goodness.
Of that whole story.
Of the whole thing, yeah. Okay.
And we only have a few clips. We have the one, and a few clips exist, sorry. And so all we have is the one scene of you. And it comes across as quite flirtatious, in my opinion, with you and Fraser Hymes.
Well, how
explain yourself.
Yeah.
Explain yourself. Well, I think this might be the moment to tell the story, because what actually happened was the first day I arrived there, the director said, "I'm awfully sorry, Brigit, but we're overrunning, so your storyline is cut." So I thought, oh, now you see it, now you don't, sort of thing. But I was very sad. He said, but, we've got a lovely costume we've made for you, which is a Victorian costume, and I'm sure we'll find something for you to do. So I wandered on. You haven't missed anything by missing the other 3 episodes, from my point of view, because I wandered on saying things like, "Where's Father?" which was John Bailey, and somebody would say, "I don't know," and I would wander off again. And I've got a story about Fraser.
Well, that's why you weren't auditioned.
That's why I wasn't auditioned. And Fraser Hymes was one of the people because they knew, all the cast knew that there was no reason really for me to be there except my frock. So they made me laugh a lot and sent me up because I really shouldn't have been there. And Fraser Hymes came up behind me when I was watching a scene, waiting to do one of these totally ineffectual entrances, saying, "Where's Father?" And he came up behind me and went, "Excuse me," like this, and I went, "Shh." I didn't look at him because I knew he was doing something awful. And he said, "Excuse me," and he went on like that, and I turned around and he'd stuffed half a candle up his nose. And he said, "Have you got a handkerchief?" like this. And I laughed very, very loudly and ruined the take. So I got into terrible trouble. And this was the sort of thing that happened to me during my 4 episodes anyway. That's it.
A question for both that you can answer. Did the Daleks actually scare you?
Well, slightly, yes. Yes, I have to say they did. They scared my daughter much more. She was 3 or 4 at the time, I think, and I got special permission to bring her onto the set. And as a joke, after lunch, one of the Dalek actors climbed in with a Dalek, and as she came into the rehearsal room, he just swung round and went, attack and destroy, and she got an attack of the... I mean, she was hysterical, absolutely hysterical with fear.
And has she recovered?
Yes,
She all
now
right?
she
Oh,
has.
good. So glad. No,
But I had loads of them in my episode.
Did you?
Because, yes, there
I
was
just had
a
two.
real battle. So there were hundreds of them when we were actually filming, and they were scary.
Gosh. Well, I remember because I was wearing a crinoline, waiting to do one of these entrances. One of the Daleks, when they rehearsed, they used to wear a bit of the costume, which was also a bit like a crinoline. So, there was me in my crinoline, and then there'd be a Dalek in his crinoline.
Metal.
So, sorry, that may be a bit giggly. I wasn't scared. I just thought it was wonderful that he was wearing a crinoline as well. Anyway.
Rula, your story in Doctor Who circles has a unique fact about it, that it has a huge death count.
Yes.
In fact, going through it the other night, I counted that you were the 24th death in it.
In that episode?
In your story. Yes, I counted them. You've all done it.
Poor man.
You've all done it. So my question for you is it difficult to do a death scene without laughing?
I've done a few in my career, I have to say. It depends on how physically demanding the actual dying process is. If it's just a sort of slump, expiring slump, then there's no great problem. If there's an awful lot of all that sort of stuff, yes, then it can promote terrible giggles. In this, I can't actually remember. I can't actually remember how I died in this. Please tell me.
Somebody like to tell her? You got shot.
I got shot,
Yeah.
right. And did I do a lot of sort of...
No, it was,
No,
it
it
was
was
sort
just
of.
one of those, a simple one. No, well, in that one I probably didn't get the giggles, but I've had other instances which have been hard not to laugh.
Okay, we're going to move away from Doctor Who slightly.
Thank God for that.
And look at everybody running out. Both of you done Coronation Street
Yeah, I'm currently doing it.
currently.
Yeah,
Still doing.
she is. I've been watching her. It's great.
So tell us any stories you have about Coronation Street.
Well, can I just say that when I was probably the programme that I least expected to be asked to do out of everything that I've ever heard of or seen, mainly because it's Northern and I'm not Northern. And when I was originally offered it, I think it was just as an introduction for Nigel Havers, who became Audrey's lover and much beloved of the Quarry watching public. Now, the first line that I had to say to Audrey was, "The cleanliness in these toilets is second to none." When I thought, you can't possibly say that in an ordinary English accent. So my agent said to me, "Look, why don't you just try tinging it gently with Northern?" And although I do an awful lot of talking books, my regional accents are not terribly good. I do a lot of foreign accents, but the regional accents are not terribly good. Insofar as years ago I was playing a Liverpudlian housewife, and one of the newspapers said it was the worst Birmingham accent they'd ever heard. Anyway, so I got on set with darling Sue Nichols, who plays Audrey, and I said, "Can I just say this to you, and you tell me how it sounds?" "The cleanliness in the stall is just second to none." She said, "No, I think you'd better take it down a bit." The cleanliness in these toilets. She said, "No, forget it." So I just did. I mean, I've slightly sort of adjusted the vowels, but nothing much.
You're grand,
But
darling.
hopefully
You're
not
grand.
standing out like a
No, you're
sore
grand.
foot.
You're lovely. It's lovely.
And your memories of Coronation
Well, I
Street?
got a lot because my husband, who's dead now, Brian Mills, directed it brilliantly for years. So I got kind of first-hand knowledge of it, and of course I met lots of them. And I was terribly proud of the episodes he did. But I kind of always never thought I would be in it. And then this part came up that I found irresistible, because it was one of Ken's possible girlfriends. And it's this nervous woman, and she meets up with him and has dinner, and keeps, every time she mentions her husband, the eyes sort of fill up. It was a super part. And then she says, I just have to take a pill, and she goes off to the loo. And she doesn't come back, and she dies.
In the toilet?
She died in the toilet. And it was, I couldn't resist it. And they come and look for her in the end, and there's these legs sticking up in the toilet. And I thought, I have to do this. This is the best. And I was terribly pleased to do it. And Bill Roach was one of the first people I ever met when I worked at Granada years before. Nothing to do with Quarry, but Quarry had just started, because I go back a horribly long way. I don't like to say how long. And he was one of the first people I'd met, and he was just delightful. So I was particularly pleased it was him that I had the scene with. It was lovely, and that's my main memory of it.
So your last scene was in the toilet, and your first line was about
What about the toilet?
Not the same one, I don't think. But the extraordinary thing about working on something like Quarry is, for the last 10 years, I've been mostly doing theatre. It's the instancy of everything in a soap like Quarry, in EastEnders as well. I did one bubble in EastEnders. Is that there is no direction as such, or very little. No. You come on and you have to give an instant performance. So you have to have it worked out exactly in your head who your character is without having been given any background information. In my situation, Audrey and I are supposed to have been friends for a long time. Nobody quite knows why that relationship hasn't been visual for the last 25 or 30 years.
But they do
but
that.
You just have to somehow work it into your performance. It's a great lesson. And I find every time I go up there, it's more of a lesson, because it's like a town in itself, the whole of Coronation Street. Although they're now, I think, moving.
I think they are, yeah. I think so.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Rick,
do you have any memories of working on Cluedo?
do you have any memories of working on Cluedo?
Oh, indeed I do, yes. I was already great friends with Michael Jaston, and I met and became friends with Koo Stark on Cluedo. And there again, it was a very bizarre show to do, because you recorded bits of it, and it was all rather sort of glamorous, and then the rest of it was in the studio. And Koo and I stayed in some funny little hotel on location, and we became great friends for a long time. So I remember it well from that point of view.
Anybody else? I thought I saw a hand over there. No? Come on, anybody got any questions? Kevin?
There is a Doctor Who link, of course, and the fact that Rodney Booze was in Rula's Dalek story.
Yes. Rodney Booze was in your Dalek story.
Yes, he was, and he was in yours as well, wasn't he?
No.
Oh, I thought you said he was.
No.
When we were talking up there.
No, darling. No, he wasn't.
Right.
No.
So I guess we could ask, what are your memories of whatever happened to the Likely Lads?
That's clearly what I was leading to, yeah.
Memories of whatever happened to the Likely Lads?
Yeah.
Well, again, it's a terribly long time ago. It was quite extraordinary, because I'd been heavily involved in drama, sort of really heavy drama before that.
Real acting.
Real acting. Lots of real acting. In something called Holly, which was a kind of psychological drama. So and all my telly stuff had been mainly drama. And then this part came up, and I had to go and audition for that. And I remember reading the scripts and thinking how wonderful they were. I can remember laughing out loud at the scripts, because they were just brilliant. And I remember thinking, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do some comedy? And I remember thinking I quite hoped I'd get it for that reason, because I'd been so heavily kind of doing all this sort of stuff. And so I was very pleased when I got it. And then it was a huge change, because we did them in front of an audience as well as the camera, which is really, so it makes you schizophrenic, because you don't know where to play to. Because obviously if there's people there, your instinct is to play to them. But really it's for the camera, it's for the audience at home. So it's quite difficult to judge it. And I found that quite hard because I'd mainly done masses of theatre and quite a lot of television as well, but not in front of an audience. So that was a challenge. And it was quite extraordinary. I had no idea that it was going to be so successful. Because we did it and it was lovely and everything. And then I went on and did a period thing, I think, the Master of Ballantrae straight after. And didn't really think any more about it. And then I got a delayed feedback. I think, how late can it get? But the delayed payoff from it has been colossal, but it's been very late for me, if that makes any sense. At the time, I didn't particularly get a payoff. Sorry, that's not what you want to hear, is it? What do you want to hear? I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Brigit, do you think Bob and Thelma will still be married today?
What a question. I suspect they would, because I think she would have. She just wanted this nice home and everything to work out, and she's quite a strong character. I think they probably would, actually. Maybe.
So we can look forward to whatever happens to the right.
I don't think there's ever going to be any more, because I don't think the boys want to do it really, and they are the likely lads. So, I don't think there would be ever, in case you're hoping, because so many people ask that, but I don't think so. I don't think there will be. I think it was one of those things of its time, and then that's it really, I think. But what do I
with
know?
very few exceptions, bringing things back that were hugely successful
Doesn't
at a
always
certain
work.
time doesn't
I
work.
don't think it works, because it was of its time, and that's the thing that everybody says about it is, they could identify with the characters. I don't know if they would now. In fact, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't. No, I don't think it would work.
And things like the liver birds and
Yeah,
all of those.
all
I think
those.
times have changed. I don't
Changed
think
drastically.
It would have the same meaning
look
now.
what's happened in the last 10 years. I don't think it would mean anything really now. But what do I know? Nothing.
Rula, in 2006, you entered the Celebrity Big Brother house.
I did, for my sins.
And
How brave.
for many people, you know where I'm going with this, there was a certain scene,
Which will follow me to my dying day.
yes, with a certain George Galloway. Would you like to tell us all
I
about
will tell you all about it. Firstly,
I didn't know about this.
going into the Big Brother house was a huge decision. It was something I knew very little about. And the main character on the stick, apart from the fact that you are paid fairly well to do it, but originally it was Strictly Come Dancing, which I really, really wanted to do. And unfortunately that year it was full. They had everybody they needed. So they said, how do you feel about Big Brother? And I said, oh, God, no, never in a million years. And then I went in, I was persuaded to go in for a meeting with the producers, and apart from the rather nice sum of money that you get for yourself, what the general public didn't know was that a percentage of the public interaction, whether it was by email, text or telephone, was divided amongst the celebs to go to their chosen charities. And we were promised that it would be in excess of £60,000 each. And for me, that was what really made up my mind. The whole rigmarole leading up to Big Brother was unbelievably secretive. I wasn't allowed to tell anybody, not even closest family, until a week beforehand, under the threat that if you were discovered to have leaked anything to the press, then you wouldn't do it. As I say, I knew very little about it. I suspected that we would all be sleeping in one room, but I thought it would be men and women separate. I had no idea that there would only be the one toilet. I'd seen half or bits of episodes, but I'd never properly watched it, and I'd always been rather scathing of reality television. So on the day before, was picked up in this blacked out Black Mariah with a suitcase of clothes with very strict instructions of what one was allowed to take and what one wasn't allowed to take. So you're allowed to take 200 cigarettes, 1 bottle of wine or champagne or something like that. And then clothes, you were allowed to take what you wanted, which would fit into the one suitcase that they gave you, which would be taken apart and examined minutely to make sure that you weren't smuggling anything forbidden in. And amongst the forbidden things were any writing material, any books, obviously, any handcraft like knitting or embroidery or anything like that, timepieces which were confiscated as soon as we got in there. I was picked up at 8 o'clock in the morning. From then until sometime in the evening, I don't quite know what time because all our timepieces were removed, I was stuck in a room with a bodyguard who I'd never met before. They went through my suitcase, transferring it into a Big Brother suitcase with a fine-tooth comb. Everything was written down and itemized. Then there was an obligatory hour with a psychotherapist, by which time I was getting pretty scared. I wasn't allowed to contact anybody. My mobile phone was taken away from me. And it was a little bit like waiting to go into prison. Anyway, the final bit is we get driven up by limousines and you've got earphones on, and then you're told that as the car opens there will be banks of photographers and you have to face that way for a bit and then that way for a bit, and then Davina will escort you into the Big Brother house. So all of this is fairly nerve-wracking, not having eaten all day, copious amounts of black coffee, which was a big mistake, and hundreds of cigarettes. And as you walk down the stairs on the inside, you have no idea whether there's anybody in there before you, whether you're going to be the first person, who else is going to be in there. And I think there were 3 or 4 people in there, young people who I didn't know from Adam. And then in walked Pete Burns. And I thought, oh my God, do you know who Pete Burns is?
No, I don't.
Well, he's
I'm
a
so ignorant.
transvestite, amazing looking guy,
Wow.
highly intellectual, most famous for the fact that he had his lips transplanted, which are enormous. And then the transplant went wrong and anyway, I won't go into that, but
It sounds
fully made up,
fascinating.
trans something, I'm not quite sure whether it was vestite, substantiate, sexual, whatever, but an extraordinary character. Then Michael Barrymore, who I did know, and then George Galloway, and I thought, oh, finally, you know, an intelligent man who I've respected hugely over the years for marching against war on want. At least there'll be somebody interesting to talk to. And most of the people, apart from that, I didn't know. Oh, there was Dennis Rodman, who was a 6'5", highly pierced and tattooed black baseball player, who was very scary as well.
Wonderful.
Anyway, the first 2 or 3 days, when you get used to the fact that you're sleeping in a dormitory and Big Brother calls all the shots, you're woken up either by the sound of a child screaming incessantly and at volumes like you wouldn't believe, or a bell tolling like before an execution, or Alsatians yapping and howling as loud as they could, or somebody playing the violin very badly, or one of the current songs, pop songs of the people in there. And of course, Pete Burns, you spin me right round, baby, right round, was on and on and on and on. And then there's nothing to do until Big Brother sets you the tasks. Nothing at all to do. So you quarrel about who's preparing the food, because that's something to do. And of course, you know that you get either rewarded or punished for the things that get set for you by Big Brother as a group. So your responsibility is to the group as a whole. They used to turn the heating up or turn the heating down or lock the toilets or unbelievable things. Anyway, to get back to George Galloway, this was an incredibly innocent, believe it or not, bit of improvisation that was given to me, that I had to pretend to be the owner of a cat who for some reason was refusing to eat its food. And as an animal lover, I was to interact with George Galloway, who was going to be playing the cat, to try to find out why he wasn't eating his food.
He was playing the cat.
He was playing the cat. I had no idea he was going to throw himself wholeheartedly into this improvisation.
Amazing.
And we were put in a space where the furniture was immovable. It was bolted to the floor, so it was very small and very intimate. And so he gets down on all fours and starts purring and meowing and nudging himself ever deeper into my crutch. And I'm tickling his ears and stroking his head and saying, "Oh, the pussycat, why the pussycat on?" And he's going deeper, deeper, head right in there, right? And of course they filmed it, not showing how or where it was, but in close-up.
Yeah,
George
of
Galloway
course. Yeah.
nuzzling into my crutch. So when I came out of the Big Brother house, that close-up
Was
of
used
him in my lap
relentlessly.
was even on the front of the New York Times. And I've never been able to get away from it since. But it was perfectly innocent.
Extraordinary.
Bridget,
Yes.
a lot of people in this room will remember you as Miss Maitland in Dark Season.
Oh, do they?
There's
No,
at least
they
one
don't.
at the back anyway.
Is there anybody? Does anybody remember me?
Rick, yes.
Oh,
there
I'm
we go.
so glad.
What are
Yes.
I remember it as well.
I've got terrific memories of that because it was Russell T. Davis's first script, and it was a terrific script. And people like Rosalie Crutchley, wonderful people were in it. And I had an absolutely super part because I was the teacher who was in charge of the main children in it. And it was Kate Winslet's first job.
Well,
Yeah, and she was 15 at the time.
why wasn't she in school?
Her school was, she was in that, you know that theatre school, the Sylvia... what's it
Beesdale.
called?
Sylvia-
Oh, no, I know.
Sylvia
You know,
Young.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Sylvia Young School, you know, because they're all doing it all the time. Anyway, she was just acting and acting. So she got this part. And I remember particularly, she was very big, but her face, I remember thinking, that girl
It's going
is
to be a
going to
star.
be, yeah.
She was very
I did.
big.
She was enormous. She was enormous. She really was enormous. Well, she was only 15, but she was very big, but her face was stunning, absolutely stunning. And she was full of life and great fun. You know, she was frightfully anxious to get it right and kept saying things like, "Did you think that was any good?" Or, "What did you think of that?" Or, you know, and just things like that. And anyway, that was her first job, which was lovely. So, and of course she went on to be, how big a star do you have to be? So I felt I forecast that. That was one memory. Also, I got to drive the JCB at the end. Such power. I got to, she saves them all by smashing this pipe in a JCB. For those of you who haven't seen it, you must see it. It's terribly exciting. And and I was allowed to do my own stunt. I don't know why.
That doesn't happen anymore.
No, I think it saved them money. But I said I would love to drive a JCB because I never had. Well, I mean, it's a chance, isn't it? So somebody came down, gave me a couple of lessons. And of course, it's a bit like patting your head and doing that because you have to do lots of levers at the same time. But I did it, and that was terribly exciting. And then I had to smash this pipe, and I saved the day at the end. It was super. And we had must have been about 3 weeks filming on it. It was all done on film. It was a delight. And Rosalie Crutchley, I was thrilled to meet her because I'd watched her for years and all those, you know, all those big, like the Count of Monte Cristo and things like that. She was one of the people one sort of idolised that made you want to come into the business, really. And there she was. And I think it was her last thing she did because then she suddenly died. So I felt thrilled that I'd met her. I think that's the main memories. It was whoever asked. It was the one person who's seen it. It was a super job, and very good. And I think you should all see it. It's on DVD.
Can I just say, regarding doing your own stunts, I had the most extraordinary example of that filming Robin of Sherwood. Do any of you remember
Yes.
sort of Wayland?
You preempted my next question.
Sorry. Well, I played a sort of satanic nun in that. So most of the time dressed in the full nun's outfit, of which I know a lot because I was educated in a convent. So like a sort of Darth Vader, you know, the full long black thing with a high white wimple.
Yeah.
And when she finally reveals her satanity, Satanism, whatever you call it, there's this wonderful scene in the crypts of Wells Cathedral where, by the way, I was convinced that I was going to be struck dead, having been brought up as a Catholic and having to march down the centre aisle with all these other satanic nuns doing the Litany of the Saints backwards. I was convinced that something ghastly was going to happen. Anyway, so we're all in the basement of Wells Cathedral, and we strip out of our nuns' robes, and underneath that, long black hair down to here and a scarlet robe, and we're invoking the devil to manifest itself. And when they told me that the devil very nearly does manifest itself, and then Robin Hood and his merry men arrive and the spell is broken and the whole thing doesn't quite work out, and I, as Morgan of Ravenscar, make my escape, and this was all filmed on St. Michael's Mount in Marazion. And my death was supposed to be that I'm running away from the merry men into the sea, still dressed in these flowing robes, with these pounding hoofs all round me, and one of the hoofs hits me on the head, and I lose consciousness and drown. Oh, fantastic. On the day that I arrived, and they showed me my stunt double, she comes up to about there on me, pencil thin, short little freckled face, short little spiky hair, and the director, Robert Young, looks, there's no way that we can use her as a double. I mean, quite apart from the fact that she doesn't look anything like you, even with a wig on, she's about 9 inches shorter than you are. Would you be prepared to do your own stunt? So I thought, oh, no, here's a chance to be really brave. So I found out exactly what it entailed, which was the camera shooting, the horses coming galloping at me. I see them, I turn, and I start to run into the sea. Well, have you ever tried running in the sea in that deep water? It ain't easy, especially with long flowing robes on. And then this panic with the horses, who were really quite close. And it was one of the most terrifying things I think I've ever done in my life. And I don't think it would be allowed now.
No.
They're very nervous now, allowing actors to do their own stunts. I sort of managed it. I don't think they were able to film it in quite as exciting a fashion as they would if they'd had a properly trained stunt double to do it, but managed to get away with it.